Okay, so I want to talk about some of the merits of the locals, or the locality within which I live right now, okay? Um, this is possibly going to be unintentionally funny or unintentionally offensive, and I'm going to try to keep it, as civil as I can. But without further ado, here goes nothing. So, in the place I live in, there's not much of a nightlife at all, but it's often very quiet during pretty much all hours of the day when you're not dealing with, I don't know, certain kinds of um, like construction or something. It's largely a quiet place. Also, de escalating conflict is often quite easy because most people here are sober and law abiding, and they're more or less aware of what they value um, during most hours of the day. So there are certain roles in which you're going to deal with mistreatment, like if you're a cashier and nobody really knows you, then you will deal with a so-called Karen or something. But um, things don't often go from like people testing each other and then exchanging insults and then getting into fistfights and whatnot, because there are many men here who will actually, believe it or not, go their entire lives without meaningful physical conflict. So it's safe in a way that is just completely inconceivable to plenty of people out there, okay? We don't worry about teenage felons here. What we worry about is like whether someone is going to go from like Protestant to Catholic or vice versa. That would be a crisis here in many families. Um, so unemployed men here, this is something I've observed. I haven't confirmed it using, say, statistical deductions, but unemployed men here largely preoccupy themselves with, say, video games rather than with, criminal activities or certainly anything violent. I've had my phases of being like a loser and, a nobody, and I played a lot of video games. And I never once thought of like robbing someone or something. So, yeah, there's a very kind of slow paced lifestyle here. And let's see. This is kind of generic or repetitive, but the violence or conflict here is it's kind of overwhelmingly verbal or psychological rather than physical and terminally consequential. So, there have been times when I was, physically threatened, I think, unreasonably. But, in those situations, you're dealing with some young man who is just not really sure of his place in the world, and you don't get mad at him. You just kind of like leave that situation peacefully while making yourself small in the moment because you realize like this guy is just somebody who didn't have like maybe a proper fatherly influence or something. So, no hard feelings there. Um, and then you learn that there are certain unspoken rules, especially from certain demographics. If I'm out and about in public and I see, a pretty young woman, um, then the first thing I do is like immediately walk away. I learned that at some point at a young age, and it's kept me safe so far. And I expect that that's going to keep me safe throughout my future here and in pretty much any other place. Um, of course, if you're from some backgrounds, you might say, why would you do that? But I would say, I'm not going to explain that entire thing. This is a quiet, civil, law abiding, predictable, safe place to live. And it's largely thanks to the virtues of the locals here that I'm kind of able to thrive as I'm evidently thriving on, the YouTube channel and in certain aspects of life. So, uh, I have a lot to thank my loved ones for, but I also want to say that the place in which I live is one that includes a lot of people who are earnestly trying to live healthy and upstanding lives. So even if we have disagreements about certain things, or we might not see eye to eye on everything, I expect us to engage in civil disagreements, which will involve maybe protracted verbal exchanges or my perusal of some information I'm not aware of, rather than some kind of immediate resort to violence that could put me or somebody else in a hospital. So, yeah, if you're out there and you're one of the locals in my current place, then, thank you for just being you. A lot of you folks don't realize that even if you may not conceive of yourself as an incredible person, you are at least fundamentally safe to be around. And that does a whole lot for those of us who are kind of oddballs and recluses. You create a certain baseline of comfort that may not be registered consciously, but it does a lot for the kind of the intellectual and spiritual growth of the people around you. Okay, assuming that they're making sincere efforts to level themselves up when they're alone. Thank you for watching and have a good day, and God bless you.